Welcome to the Insura-Preneur podcast, where we decode the secrets of organic growth and peak valuation for insurance entrepreneurs. Hi, I'm Michael Jans, founder of Insurance Profit Systems, Agency Revolution, and most recently, the Society of Insura-Preneurs, where our promise is if you own it, we'll help you grow it. Whether I'm sharing key insights or speaking with innovators who are reshaping our industry, you'll discover proven strategies in each podcast for the perfect insurance trifecta: maximum growth, superior margins, and peak valuation. Jay Mueller, hey there. How are you?
I'm good, Michael. How are you?
Well, I'm good. I've been wanting to have this conversation and record this conversation really since I've started to get to know you as a new member of our mastermind group, or newish, because your story is just so darn interesting and so fascinating. And to some extent, you have taken a trend that all of us are aware of, and you've taken it to the extreme. It's funny how falling in love might make that happen.
Yes.
So we'll get into the juicy details of this later. But I'll ask you to start by simply introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about the agency and how you got into this wonderful industry.
Yeah. So Jay Mueller, I'm the CEO of Camargo Insurance. We're based in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I got into this industry the same way that many of us do, which is through nepotism. My grandfather started the agency back in the 50s, and I got involved in 2005, seven. So I'm going on, I think, 17 years in the business.
Got it. All right. And so the agency that you have now, how did you acquire that?
Right. So I started in it as, son of the boss, as a producer,
Mm-hmm.
and within that role for, I don't know, 10 plus years. And there was a partner involved as well. Over time, I bought out my dad and ultimately bought out the remaining partners to take control of the agency. That was in 2018. So we kind of hit a big reset button in January of 2019, which I think is around when you and I originally got connected. I had a big, bold vision, which we are continuing to execute on, and I was scared and looking for solutions, and fell into your funnel.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, and so I'm a little bit embarrassed about that because it's important to me. I have a vague recollection of it, but apparently you'd been bouncing around that funnel, which wasn't really terribly organized or structured, in this phase in my career. So it may have it took a long time for you to finally come out the bottom of the funnel.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I'm pleased that you did.
Yeah. Well, part of that was when we restructured, we basically cut the agency in half. So,
Right.
we went through this big restructure phase where I was trying to get us out of the, traditional sort of sole proprietor is not the right word, but sole practitioner, right? Out of that sole practitioner model into a scalable organization. And I did that at the same time that I cut our revenue in half. So it took a while to be able to get to the point where I could afford high level coaching and services, such as yours.
Sure.
So I
Yeah.
myself back around 5 years down the line.
Okay. Got it. So choosing to reduce revenue, talk to us about, like, not every entrepreneur wakes up in the morning and says, I wonder how I can reduce our revenue. So talk to us about your strategic thinking behind that.
Yeah, good call out. Generally not a good plan. For me, it wasn't a choice. It was just a matter of the way the buyout came
Right.
together.
Okay.
What I did know is that for us to be able to continue to survive and thrive for the next 30 years, not the next 3 or 10, I was going to need full control of the organization because I wanted to make big moves. I wanted to build a sales and marketing organization. I wanted to build a sales team. I wanted to be able to run it from anywhere in the world. And there was no way I was going to be able to do that with a 50% partner. God bless whoever that person is. That just probably wasn't going, their vision was probably not going to align with mine. So because I wanted to make that happen, the result was I was able to acquire the remaining shares, but our revenue was cut in half.
Got it. Okay. So this is around 18 or 19.
Correct.
Um, what does the agency do? And we'll get to your big move, but I'm curious, what does the agency do? Who is your marketplace? That's the first question.
Yeah,
Mix of
so
business.
we were before 2019, we were your traditional suburban, primarily home and auto driven agency. And that was 95% of our revenue came from home and auto business. In a, maybe one of the most standard of standard states in Ohio. A profit pocket traditionally for insurance carriers. So we
Mm-hmm.
want a lot of E&S business. We're not doing a lot of commercial business. And as I was seeing the industry change, I wanted to build a commercial lines division. I wanted us to become a commercial lines player to answer your question, what I would call the large small. So not really moving into the true mid-market space, but we want to be out of the micro. We want to be into those accounts that have enough meat on the bone that we can actually service them at a high level, but they're not getting hit on by the big national brokerages every year.
Got it. So above the BOPs, but below that middle market arena.
Right.
And you've got some niches that you focus on.
Yes.
Got
Yeah.
it.
And
And
yeah.
and it's my understanding that I don't recall. One or more of them may have sort of expanded geographic footprint.
Yeah, we're in around 40 states, although the vast majority of our business is in the Cincinnati area. So in that tri-state, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana area. When we're operating in some of our key niche markets, such as commercial real estate and trucking, we're operating, effectively nationwide. There's a couple
Right.
states.
Right. Okay. And you used the term like sole proprietor or something
Exactly.
like that. Um, So, what was that like? What were you doing then? What was your concern then, and what did it look like then?
So yeah, I mean, the agency was a pretty traditional setup with a few partners that were the primary drivers of new business and also doing a lot of the just day-to-day work.
Yeah,
And I am incredibly grateful that I had the opportunity to join an agency like that and learn it from the inside out, learn how to produce, learn how to service, learn how to do all those things. What I was seeing though was carriers wanted more, commission rates were trending down. If we wanted to continue to be successful, I felt like we needed to move beyond that sole practitioner model. I also mapped out early on in my career a really basic financial model of just like what I could produce and what our retention rate was and just projected it out and realized, oh, this curve becomes flat very quickly. And that where that curve flattens out does not meet my personal financial goals. So I'm either going to need to lean my own sales way upstream to be able to increase my own capacity to produce at a really high level, or maybe better align. I think the skill set I bring with where I want to go, and that is to build an organization that can get us there.
got it. So you were in the danger of being stuck on what I call level one in the five levels of the modern insurance agency, where the agency is overly dependent upon the principal as rainmaker or producer or doer. You wanted to get to the point where you could scale. That only happens when you jump up to level two and you begin to build systems, and you run those systems and design those systems that build the agency. Okay.
Yeah, good
So,
description. And that
so
also, I think
yeah,
it important. That's also what I enjoyed doing. I didn't necessarily know how to do it at the time. It's a constant evolution and learning, but
right.
I I kind of got tired of selling and I just wanted to do something else and found that, oh, like I have a decent knack at creating systems that can get things done. So maybe I should lean into that skill versus someone who maybe is just a killer producer and that's where they can lean into.
Got it. Okay. So this kind of now we start to get into some of the juicy stuff. Because if you were going to stay at that level one stage, there's no way you could make this transition to where you are right now. It'd
Maybe.
be maybe.
So I did it for a while, but
Okay.
I would agree, and I can share that story if you'd like, but I
Okay.
would that it'd be much harder. But I was a producer working for 3 months of the year from Spain, where I am now, for about 10 years. I was in that role and not present at all in the United States for 3 months of the year.
Okay, that's fascinating. All right. Um, so let's talk about this transition. I'm looking at you. Obviously, you're working in a home environment or a
Uh,
garage environment.
Co-working, it's a co-working down the street from my apartment, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
also my storage facility
It's
because
okay. Looks like more like my garage where you got bikes hanging up on the wall. Um, and normally I would thinking, oh, I'm talking to Jay, and he's in his garage or storage unit in Cincinnati, Ohio. Apparently not. So probably not a surprise to the audience that we have here today, because I announced this in the promo. You're in Spain. You're outside Seville, as I understand.
Valencia.
Oh,
Yeah.
Valencia. Okay. Beautiful, sunny. Um,
I can't
right.
complain. Nice.
Can
We're close,
can
about a mile from the coast, got the mountains behind us, so I've got,
Pretty
I
nice.
should not be complaining.
Okay. And you are the CEO of Carmago Insurance, which is it basically in Cincinnati. All
Yeah,
right.
we have one location in Cincinnati. That's correct.
So that doesn't happen every day. So let's start with this. First of all, why? Why Spain of all places?
Yeah, so well, I always wanted, even from a young age, to be able to live anywhere. I originally thought I had this vision of like, my family always spent time on Lake Michigan in the summers. And I thought, oh, I'll have a house on Lake Michigan. I'll have like a plane and I'll fly back and forth and I'll run it from Michigan. I studied abroad my junior year of college and met my now wife, Adela. Thank goodness. So I was studying abroad in the Netherlands. She was my neighbor. We connected. We each finished up our year in college, and then I moved here for a year before I started in the agency, and then we moved back to the United States together in 2007. So that changed my vision from fishing on Lake Michigan to kite surfing and mountain biking in Valencia.
Got it. All right. So clearly, um, well, remote's been a trend. Okay, and it's been a trend. It's a trend that's under some. I think we would probably agree, at least my perspective. It's a trend that's under some push and pull. The pendulum. COVID accelerated that trend like nothing we'd seen before. Um, oh, listeners may recall that twice in the last 10 to 12 or 13 years, I've interviewed David Henmeyer Hansen, the author of the book Remote and the co-founder of 37 Signals or Basecamp, a product that a lot of people are familiar with. Obviously had a strong interest in remote work because it's a technology. His technology allows and facilitates remote. So he wrote a book called Remote, and I interviewed him like when it first came out, maybe even before that book came out. That was his third book. But then when COVID hit, we had another recording and was really well received. And I think people really sort of began to accept some of the principles of remote and creating an effective remote culture. You're doing it in some ways the opposite of the way most people do it. Okay. So, for example, my former company, Agency Revolution, went remote probably 2 or 3 years after I co-founded that company. And the reason that we went remote, I think the first remote, I'm probably wrong about this, come to think of it, but the first major remote was that we sent our chief product engineer, my son, Lucas Jans, to Vietnam to build an engineering team. Why? Well, one, I was competing with the Bay Area for engineers, and the price tag was enormous, and I was bootstrapping this company. And so we could get engineers in Vietnam, which was and is an emerging economy. So these were people who had gone to school and studied computer sciences, and we could get them for probably 35 to 40% of the price tag of a Bay Area remote um, engineer. And Luke was married. We'd done a lot of work in Vietnam. We built schools in Vietnam. We had a strong cultural connection to it. And Luke is married to a Vietnamese woman. So he was more than happy to go build the team there. And then things happened. It could have been my first remote worker was a copywriter that I'd trained for 18 months, and I really invested in him. And he said, Michael, my wife's pregnant. She wants to move. And I was like going crazy. And at that point, my president said, why don't you just go remote? And so over the next couple of years, we ended up with people in Washington State and Utah. One of our workers moved back to Maine and Vietnam. So we were Colorado, Arizona. We ended up being all over the place, but Michael stayed there. And that's kind of the normal story.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed at headquarters. I didn't show up at headquarters every day. I mean, I worked at home because I was highly productive there a lot, but the headquarters was there. We had the TV screen and people would log in from all over the world on the TV screen, but headquarters was where Michael was.
Mm-hmm.
You've done the opposite. And I think that's the way most remote goes. You've done the opposite. You've maintained probably a brick and mortar office building in Cincinnati. We can talk about how often you get people to show up and that kind of thing, but you're the one who's like the most remote of all.
Yes.
Interesting approach. And like I said, the opposite of what most people do. So a few dumb questions, and then I want to get into kind of the juicy stuff. The physical office in Cincinnati, how often are other workers required to physically be present there? And what function does that office serve?
Yeah, so we have one physical location right in downtown Cincinnati. And I'll start at the end of your question and work back. So that was a key piece of our restructure in 2019, was moving from, a more traditional office to a new modern office downtown, close to universities. I wanted to be able to build a team where we did not have a young dynamic team. So I wanted to create the best space to be able to do that. And I think the purpose of that space continues to be not just a recruiting tool, but we invest heavily in having a space where people want to be, that's going to attract and retain people to want to come into that space. So private offices, views, all the things that we can reasonably afford to make it a place that people want to work.
Got it.
And it's 2 days a week is the requirement.
And so they're required to come in 2 days a week. Boom.
Correct.
All right. And how often do you physically visit the office?
I'm normally there about once a quarter. So once every 3 months or so, I'm back for our quartership leadership team meetings, board meetings, and just making sure that I pack in all the FaceTime and those important things necessary into a couple-week period.
Okay. So talk to us about lessons learned. First, did you discover things that maybe weren't working that well that you had to fix?
Like in terms of remote work?
Yeah, the remote.
Yeah. So when I first started working remote, it was in 2000, and if I started in 2007, it was probably 2009-ish. So I was a producer, and I just said, I'm gonna go live in Spain for the summer. But in my head, I said, I'm gonna sell more than anybody. Otherwise,
Oh, right
I'm not,
on. Yeah.
I'm not gonna be allowed, or I'm not gonna feel right doing this again. So back then we just needed some really basic technology to be able to make it function. And I think this day and age, most agencies have those things in place, but even 2007 or 2009, that wasn't really the case. So VoIP phone systems, paperless filing systems, we really did start from as traditional, like fax was the main source of communication in our agency back then. We had to evolve very quickly to allow for a remote producer. So I think one of the lessons learned was, you just got to have the right technology to be able to do it. And as every year that I did that, it got easier. So the technology today that's available to be remote, it's probably a moot point, but for anybody that wants to do it, there's really nothing preventing you from doing it other than, our own desire to say, I'm going to go make this happen.
What is the tech stack that facilitates your ability to function remotely?
So once we started, as I was pursuing this dual goal or vision of live overseas and scale the agency, right? Because I was like, we're going to grow this thing. We're going to find a way to do it. Technology needs became apparent quickly. So it was first the basics, whatever, VoIP phone system, paperless, all those things. Then it was CRM, right? So we needed a CRM to be able to, first I thought of it in terms of driving leads. And then I thought of it in terms of managing a sales team's pipeline, which, yes, you can do those things if you're physically present as well. Probably better with a CRM, but when you're remote, it's like you really need to know what is where and who's working on what. Otherwise, you have no idea what's happening and whether or not, the leading indicators are there that are going to get you where you want to go.
So you've got some pipeline technology that allows you to monitor producer activity?
Yeah, so we use HubSpot for marketing, prospecting, and our sales pipeline. Then we use Agency Zoom for our CRM on the service side, which is integrated with QQ for the agency management function.
Got it. All right. And then for ongoing communications and collaboration, presumably, do you use Zoom like we are now, or do you use something else?
Zoom is a much better product, but we use Google just because it's built into our.
Fair enough. Yeah.
From Microsoft to Google a few years ago, and it's built in, so we just use that.
Got it. And have you discovered the need for any online like project management tools like ClickUp or Basecamp or anything like that? Don't need it.
No, I have not found the need for that. What we do use is a tool called 90.io, which is it's software specifically for businesses of any type that run on EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System from the
yeah.
There's a few different softwares that do that, but it essentially it has the basic foundational tools that EOS teaches, such as a meeting cadence, just basic tasks for managers, essentially, a scorecard that you report to keep track of your, weekly key data points. So we use that. It's not a workflow software per se. It's really just a place to keep it's a place to keep the necessary tools to manage a team, I would say, on a very basic level.
Got it. Okay. And is there a cadence or a rhythm of certain activities that you exercise in order for you to stay in touch and communicate?
Yeah. So
like, other than a physical visit once every quarter, what do you do during the course of the week or during the course of the month?
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been an evolution where I think because I was remote, I was terrified of losing touch with my team. And I had tons of meetings on a regular cadence with everybody in the entire organization. And it took my advisory board to really rein me in. Like, Jay, what are you spending your time on? You do not be doing this. So I have a weekly meeting cadence with our COO. And then I have they range from weekly to quarterly with other key people in the organization to touch base with them.
This episode is brought to you by the Society of Insura-Preneurs, guiding owners to the insurance trifecta of faster growth, higher margins, and peak valuation. If you want a clear and reliable roadmap to growth, download our free 5-step 30% growth blueprint at www.insura-preneur.com with a dash in the middle. It's the same system that's helped agencies double, triple, and even 10x in size, and it's yours free. Visit insura-preneur.com. Got it. Okay. One of the common anxieties that people have about going remote is the loss of culture. There's this sense that clearly, like a cocktail party where people are, rubbing shoulders and talking to each other would not be the same if it were just on Zoom. Right.
sure.
Though a lot of us probably had cocktail parties during COVID on Zoom. Yeah. So, talk to us about how you build and strengthen and infuse culture.
So that was, I think, the biggest hurdle to me moving abroad, we'll say permanently, because I was spending a few months a year overseas. And then 2 years ago, I flipped the switch and now I live here full time. My kids go to school in Spain. I'm a resident of Spain, and just come back quarterly. And the culture aspect was the most challenging piece. So if I take us back to before I moved abroad, we had the same issue when COVID hit and all of a sudden everybody went remote. And we had spent, a couple of years in this new sort of startup mentality, building this awesome team culture, and had all these young dynamic people in there writing business and, ringing the bell and all the things. And then all of a sudden it was like, bam, nobody's coming in, and it crushed me. I was like, oh my gosh, like my baby was the energy that was created here. And so as soon as we were able, I required people to come back in because I felt, for me personally, with my own style, it was really hard to maintain that culture if it was a full-time remote environment. And that's why even still today, we require people to come in 2 days a week, because I really believe in that in-person dynamic. So for me, when I moved abroad, it was like I was, any business owner brings their energy to the business every day. Whatever your energy is, you're bringing it into the business. And ideally, you're bringing in a positive, driving energy that's empowering people and moving them forward. Whatever your energy is, it's there. So when you remove that, a void is created. And that hurt us for a while. And it really made me think about, you talk about scaling a business and trusting, not just delegating, but trusting leaders to move forward. And it made me find the key, I would say the most critical person that you can hire in a business. And that is, if you're the owner, it's your right hand, whatever you want to call it. If you're the COO, it's the COO. If you're in EOS terminology, it's the integrator that takes the visionaries' ideas and integrates them across the different departments. It's a tough role to fill. But once I moved abroad, it just became very apparent that it was not an option. I needed to have that person with boots on the ground, bringing their unique energy into the business every day. And I actually ended up hiring one of our board members in a fractional capacity.
Right.
Highly experienced, already knew the team, was already respected, and was, willing to do this work 20 hours a week versus 40. So we were able to bring in, a C-suite level person to really run the operation and bring that energy every day.
Got it. So your Cincinnati operation is what we might call local remote. So in other words, they have to be able to access the office twice a week. So you're not hiring people from, let's say, distant remote. Nobody's from Texas. Nobody's from Florida. Nobody's from Vietnam. Okay.
We're building a VA team. We have one VA in India, and we want to build that out.
Okay.
We kind of view that as a
Yeah.
They are absolutely members of the team, but we're building a remote team itself in another country. And then we have our core team in the United States.
Okay. So, do you see the possibility that you might hire producers and other insurance professionals that aren't located in Cincinnati at some point, or
I mean, I
you
never say never, but it is definitely not part of our
don't,
plan.
you think
That would,
probably
that
don't
would
need
be,
to?
that would be a
Okay.
strategic pivot that is not part of our current strategy.
Cincinnati's a big enough metropolitan area where you can draw. Okay. So that being said, have you found it to be advantageous to attract high quality talent by being able to offer the opportunity for them to work at home or wherever they want to 3 days a week?
Absolutely. I can't, I'm never one to say there's one way to do things. I feel like it'd be very hard for us to recruit the level of talent we have if we said you have to be here 5 days a week.
Got it. Okay.
And beyond that, I don't think it's necessary to build the right culture and energy to have people there 5 days a week. I just think there's sort of a critical mass of face time that then allows it to happen. And it's like, as long as you get them that, I would say most people are maybe more productive if they have some of that flexibility. But left to their, it's kind of like going to the gym. It's like left to their own devices, most people will not go to the gym. But if you make them go to the gym, they'll actually feel better and perform better. So it's kind of like you have to cut, we're sort of making them go to the gym by making them come in 2 days a week. And then beyond that, perform however you want to perform.
All right. One last question on remote, and this is opinion time. Remote has been a trend, right? And that, as I mentioned earlier, that pendulum swung really fast and really hard in one direction during COVID. And people who never imagined that they'd ever consider remote work found that they were capable of doing it or forced to do it. Found that they could make sales on Zoom and they could probably see more prospects or clients a day on Zoom than driving around town. And then as COVID wound down, we saw the pendulum begin to swing back, right? And some tech companies said, "No, you're coming back to work," right? Now we're beginning to see that there was some resistance to that, and a lot of talent chose not to, right? So, and so there's this kind of dynamic between leaders who, want to build the culture and see, sort of really subscribe to, that principle of physical location and that's really popular. I mean, you see, Jamie Dimon and Google and, like leaders saying, no, that we're over that. COVID's over, get back to work. And then we also see, perhaps it's driven by the power of the labor force right now saying, no, we're not going to do that. I'm going to find somebody I'm going to go work somewhere where I have more flexibility. Where do you think it's going? And how do you think that will affect your agency, but also other agencies who may be interested in this?
Yeah, I think that businesses are going to ultimately decide their own path. And I think on an individual business level, there is no right or wrong answer. I've seen incredible organizations that are completely remote, and that's fantastic. I think just like anything else in a business, a certain level of what you do comes from the owner or the leader, whoever is at the top of that accountability chart. They are driving some version of their own unique thing into that organization. And if for you it is like remote and it just works, that's awesome. Like, great. I think businesses will continue to do that. For others, they just need that, in-person dynamic all the time to be able to create the energy that they want. So I think we're going to see a continued, ebb and flow of it. And this will just be endless until the end of time when we have these hybrid setups across the spectrum. What it means for agencies now, I think it is a strategic decision. Whatever path you take, there are costs and benefits to that path. So I think it's just really important for us to be aware of that. We could decide to be fully remote across the country tomorrow and expand our employment pool by whatever X, right? That would be a huge pro to doing
Right.
that.
Hmm.
But there's also a downside to that. The way we run our operation, it may be harder to keep the culture that we want. So I think as
Right.
long as we're aware of it, we can make the right decisions.
Okay. Um, uh, Now, the seriously one final question on remote, because I want to, there's another big topic that I want to explore with you. Here's my final question on, do you ever sort of in the dark recesses of your heart think maybe there's a trade-off that the kind of spontaneous collegiality, the grabbing a beer after work kind of thing, the trust and depth of relationship that comes from being with people. Do you think that there's some loss in creativity or productivity? Have you ever does that ever worry you?
I can't say I spend too much time worrying about that. I have a lot
Okay.
of things to worry about.
Yeah.
But so to answer your question as candidly as possible, I'm not lying awake and I think about that. But I, I, as much as I have built this life where I am remote,
Hmm.
but everywhere it is so important to me to have a community of people where I live. That was actually, I normally don't do New Year's resolutions or whatever, but I do like to think about sort of where I am and what's important to me. And sometimes if one comes to me, then that's great. This year, it was build a community of people where I am. And I think that's incredibly important. And when we talk about the work dynamic, like, is something lost? Absolutely, something is lost. Whether or not that's meaningful to the people involved, that's their own prerogative.
Okay. It's roughly a quarter to 12 in Portland, Oregon. So I guess it's roughly quarter to 2 in Cincinnati. What time is it in Valencia?
So it is, yeah. So it's quarter till 3 in Cincinnati and it's quarter till 9 in Valencia.
Quarter to 9. And so Jay, yeah, what hours do you work and yeah, how do you work around that?
So unless I'm doing a podcast with Michael Jans, I'm normally done by noon or 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which
Uh,
is 6 or 7 o'clock Valencia time.
uh-huh.
But I go in at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning here, which is the middle of the night for my team there.
Got it.
Uh, so what that really made me do was become very intentional with my time during working hours, Eastern Standard Time, right? When the office is open. So the meetings that are set, they have to be very intentional about them. And I try really hard not to schedule meetings after noon or 1 o'clock
Hmm.
because that's my family time.
Right.
But what I found was by being intentional about that, it made me get smarter about the way I was running the business. Because instead of just, oh yeah, there's time for that, there's time for that. It's like, what are we really making time for? What's actually important? And then on the flip side, I get half my workday in when nobody is bothering me.
I
So I
love
get
that. I was going to say you must have some really high productivity time. No distractions, no
oh,
interruptions.
that's my favorite part of the. I love connecting with the team virtually. Like
Right.
that's great, but I had to pull myself back. People are like, you're killing us on Slack, Jay. Like you're slacking us at 3 in the morning. We want all your ideas. Just send them in an email in one email. But I love
Okay.
that time in the morning
Yeah.
where I don't have the distractions and I can dive in.
Okay. Earlier in the conversation, Jay, you made reference to your getting advice from your advisory board. Now, from what I know or understand, this is not a board of directors where they're shareholders in the business. These are people that you have recruited to provide some kind of oversight. I don't know if it's for you or for the agency. My presumption it's for the CEO himself. So talk to us about where you got the inspiration to do that, how you structured it, and what value you get from that relationship.
Yeah, so there's a fantastic organization in Cincinnati called the Gehring Center, and they are a subsidiary. I don't know if that's the right word. They're affiliated with University of Cincinnati, UC,
Hmm.
and their mission is something along the lines of supporting family and private businesses. One of the programs they have is they help businesses build advisory boards. And to your point, it is not a board of directors. I do not report to them. They have no, equity or shares or interest in Camargo. It's a board that I've built to help me. And the purpose really, I love big, bold ideas, and I tend to have a propensity to take action, and that can be good, but it can also be detrimental. So having that board allows me to sort of, let the creativity flow, but then I make sure I'm not taking any big action unless I have vetted it with the board.
How many? Uh-huh. How many people are on it?
We have 4 members
How often do they meet?
quarterly.
How do you prepare an agenda?
So the Gehring Center helped me with the first few meetings, provided sort of a template on, hey, this is how you can operate with a board. And then they kind of let me run with it. But the basic idea is, hey, here's a financial update. And that was one of my first learnings with the board was, hey, you need better financial reporting. And I immediately went out and hired a fractional CFO, and it changed my whole world. It was like,
Right.
Here's the actual numbers I need. So it starts with some basic financial reporting, and then it's sort of a like, where have we been? What have we accomplished? What challenges have we faced over the last quarter? Where are we right now? And then where are we going? So what are the strategic initiatives we are either involved in now that I could use some feedback and guidance on, or what are the strategic initiatives that we are considering?
How long are the meetings?
Anywhere from 3 to 4+ hours.
Aha. Okay. And did you recruit them individually, or did they come to you from the center?
So yeah, the Gehring Center, they have sort of a bench of professionals in our area that have raised their hand and said, hey, I'd like to be on a board. And they vet them. Then they guided me through the formation of a charter that basically, clarified what we're looking for. And then they presented me with an incredible list of very highly qualified people. And I was like, are you kidding me? These people want to be on my board. This is amazing. And then I had the incredible opportunity to interview them all and actually, narrow it down to 3 or 4 that seemed like the right fit.
Got it. And so when you look back, how long have you been operating it?
Probably 3 years now.
Okay. And however you would do this, how would you rate its effectiveness or its influence on you?
I mean, it's a 10 for sure. It from the really, I'll call it basic stuff of like, hey, your financial reporting needs to be better, which came out of some of those first meetings where I had all these ideas and I couldn't wait to share all these different things that we were going to do. And they're like, hey, man, first, like, get clarity on your financial statements, then we can talk about all this stuff. So that was huge. And beyond that, I mean, the meetings really flow from, bringing it back to your first question, really exploring strategic initiatives for the company and also what that means for me as the business owner. Because there's really nothing we do as business owners within the company that doesn't affect us somehow. So it's been incredible to have this panel of highly qualified, engaged people that can help me vet those ideas through both of those lenses.
Got it. Well, in a moment, I'm going to open it up for questions. Before I do that, Jay, yes, you're relatively young, but you've done some fairly bold things, and to some extent on the cutting edge of major strategic trends, not just in the industry, but in business in general. If you could deliver a message to other insura-preneurs, based on what you've learned or what you've observed and where you think the industry is going, what would you say? What do you want to share that you think matters to other insura-preneurs?
I think one of the game changers for me was looking outside of our industry to better understand where I am, where my business is, and where we are going. We are incredibly blessed to have amazing resources within our industry, but it can be it can create its own challenges because there's like a loop of this information and things we're talking about. When we step outside of the industry and engage with the entrepreneur community more at large, that really helped me remove myself from my business and really think about what entrepreneurs are doing. It doesn't matter what kind of business they're running. So Entrepreneurs Organization is has been one of the main sort of avenues that I've leveraged to build those kind of relationships and that kind of awareness. So I would highly encourage everyone in the insurance industry to take a step back and look outside of our industry. Think about entrepreneurship in terms of entrepreneurship, not in terms of the insurance industry.
Right on. Right on. Okay. So at this point, I will turn to the audience to see if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask Jay, or you can ask me. Raise your hand or unmute yourself and you can pipe right in. Al, I think there you go.
Yeah, I got three quick ones, and two may be related, but on the board, do you pay the board?
Yes.
Okay. And that's when you interview them, they come up with their pricing, and you decide whether you want to hire them? Is that?
Yeah, so the Gehring Center kind of guided me through that process. I kind of feel like on a podcast I shouldn't share what we're compensating them with, but I don't think they would really care. But individually, I'm happy to share that with you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know enough about it that it's not like crazy, but it's enough that all parties take it seriously. I think that's probably the key kind of psychological principle, is that we can expect it to be serious on both sides of the table.
I would relate it to an investment in a really qualified coach, right? Like it's probably in that same range to run a small board for a year.
Right. Okay. What about tracking when people are working from home 3 days a week? How do you measure that they're actually working and not, doing the laundry, watching soap operas, whatever else goes on when people work from home?
Yeah. So we've discussed at the leadership team level, should we invest in software to more, sort of precisely track clicks and all the things. We've chosen not to go that route. If we were a much larger organization, maybe that's something we would need to do. I'm not sure. We're not there yet. But the way we do it now is, we're tracking more general measures of productivity where that will become apparent over time if they're just not getting the job done. I guess my insight there is that it normally does become apparent over time, and it doesn't take that long, as long as you have some basic productivity measures set up.
And those are the KPIs you're doing through the EOS system and stuff along those lines.
Right. So, number of tickets completed, and number of tasks completed. Do they have rotting tasks out there? And then there's some of that is still just some of the feel stuff. It's like, is our service manager saying we keep getting calls about this person that's never available?
Right.
That might be an indicator.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Good answer. If anybody else has any question that you want to ask Jay or myself, raise your hand. I'll give you a moment. And if not, Jay. So yeah, I'm sorry we somehow we didn't time. What's that?
I saw a couple people raising their hand. Josh.
Oh, good. Yeah, Josh. Okay, hang on. Boom, Josh Diaz. Good to see you again. How you doing?
Yeah, good to see you. I'm doing good. I just had a question that's probably just pretty simple, but as Michael knows, I've been kind of diving into different forms of technology and stuff that we can incorporate as well. So I was just wondering, like, what all do you use HubSpot for? Like, what are the benefits to using HubSpot?
So great question. We have run the gambit of agency technology, probably to our own detriment, one of the reasons I built a board was so I would stop switching technologies. But we've been on everything from no CRM to Salesforce, integrated from marketing all the way to accounting seed, and off of that, because it was too much, to Agency Zoom, which is a great tool, but has its limitations. So currently we leverage HubSpot for our marketing, prospecting, and sales processes. So, we have it for lead gen, so to manage our contacts and, filter our different leads into different categories and monitor engagement. And then, ultimately we have sales pipelines set up to manage our active deals in the HubSpot environment. And then once those deals are closed, then we push them into the Agency Zoom environment. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, in a way. I've looked at HubSpot for a few things. I never really dived too deep as to what all the capabilities of it are. And I know there's like a free version, and I guess there's an upgraded version that you pay for. So I was just kind of looking for some information on that.
Well, so I think my big learning in having been on industry specific CRMs versus CRMs that are not industry specific, such as a HubSpot or a Salesforce, especially if you go to the HubSpot level. I think HubSpot is a really good sort of, I don't know if middle of the road is the right way to describe it. It's not nearly as complex as Salesforce. So it's way easier to build and manage. Unless you're like an enterprise level organization, Salesforce is probably more than, most businesses need, unless that's really your thing. Like, man, you love building this stuff and you can really make it rock. HubSpot is like one step down, and it is incredibly powerful. You can learn it yourself if you just go through their, hubs, or you can hire outsourced support across the globe if you can kind of direct them on what you want done. And you will have to kind of figure out what you want it to do to figure out what version you need, whether it's the starter or pro or enterprise or whatever. But something like a HubSpot compared to something like an Agency Zoom, which is industry specific, it's a little bit more complex to set up than Agency Zoom. And there's other, Agency Zoom like platforms. But the power is way beyond. So I think it comes back to getting clear on what we want out of our CRM before making the decision of, which is the right CRM. And I would also,
it has to flow from a needs assessment.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You have to determine what it is that you need. In fairness to a company that is still a sponsor that I founded many, many years ago, I'll put Agency Revolution in a slightly different category because of the power.
I can't speak
Well, it is. I think it's clearly the leading agency marketing platform for. That integrates with all the major agency management systems. And so for nurturing, cross-selling, onboarding anybody and everybody that is in your management system, there are technologies in the industry, and I just named one, that are capable of doing that.
Yeah, I would, what technology you choose is such a huge question. And like Michael said, I would not be in a position to be able to build out HubSpot the way we want it built if I had not already built out an industry specific platform that was easier because it had a lot of the stuff built for me. And then I learned where the walls were, but it was the right system for us for years. And now I have the understanding to say, okay, this is actually the need that I have that is requiring me to move to this more customized platform. So I think, that there is a great space for those industry specific platforms. And they're a really good, not necessarily starting point, but I mean, there's large agencies that are running on industry specific platforms like Agency Zoom or Agency Revolution.
Boom. Okay. Josh, anything else?
No, that was it. No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I will look one last time to see if we have any little digital hands raised. If you do. All right. Is that Jay?
Yep. Hey Jay,
Hey, man.
what size agency do you have? Your staff and producers, and is it mainly? I guess you're split commercial
Uh,
versus personal and stuff. Since you were 90,
yeah,
you said 95% personal at one time.
yeah. So we were 95% personal before we restructured. We are about two-thirds commercial now, so about a third personal and two-thirds commercial. Our team is around 13 people, somewhere in that range. And we have, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but 3 or 4 commercial lines producers, a couple of personal lines advisors and hybrid roles, and then some, service and administrative people,
Got you.
as well as, our COO who does not have an insurance function beyond that.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Jay?
I think that's it. I mean, I live 4 miles away from this office, and sometimes it's tough to do that from home. Seems like, but yeah, we did the same thing during COVID, and everybody went remote, and we already had the systems in place, so that was great to be able to do that. But I'd never done a Zoom call until that, and it couldn't, hard to sort of figure that out at the beginning. But now it's like breathing,
Mhm.
it's pretty easy to do. So things have changed so much. So that's good to know.
Jay Grogan, as I recall, you have branch offices.
Yes.
So in some ways, that's not dissimilar.
No, you're right. Yeah.
They're not in Spain, but you don't have immediate physical proximity to them.
True.
And
a couple hours
so,
away on the
yeah,
furthest one. Yeah.
collaborating, managing, building culture, leading, you have all the same issues that Jay Mueller has to deal with from across the ocean.
Yeah.
I would say it was well, it was
2 hours
also
away though.
like I could book a flight right now and be back in 2 days. It's not so like what would actually require my presence in less than 48 hours? Like I don't literally carry a fire hose and like put out fires. What could
Yeah.
actually happen?
Right.
But it's a little bit of a mental leap to say like, okay, even though I'm already doing it, I'm going to physically remove myself from this. And I would say there's a lot of power in that when you do it. It's letting go and trusting the people that are there to do their
Yeah,
thing.
and that's huge. One of the things I've tried to do is replace myself as much as possible. But the COO, I don't have that one yet, and that one I would definitely be interested in.
So
Diving in some of that.
As I went
General
down,
sales manager or the COO or something.
as I went down that path of, okay, I'm really going to do this. I'm going to live abroad, and then did it. The formation of a board was actually a key component of that. And that was, I want to make sure for both my team and my community that we are viewed as legitimate, right? This isn't just like mailbox money for Jay. I am as committed to this as I ever was. And we are going places, and we have all these awesome professionals on our board that are part of our organization that believe in what we're doing. And that both, I think, empowered me to be able to let go and be somewhere that's not physically in the community, as well as it ultimately we hired our COO from the board. But even if we had not done that, I think the fact that those people are behind us, then when I'm going out and I'm looking for, that's a tough role to fill. But it takes intentionality. The people are out there, like you can fill it. We can all fill it. It might take swings and misses, but you can fill that role. Having that board behind it can help give you some horsepower to land that person.
Good.
All right. To the two J's, you're both members of the mastermind group. I'll do a mutual intro. So if you want to exchange some content about hiring a COO and what to look for and job descriptions, if that would be valuable, I'd be happy to put you guys in touch with each other. Because
Sure.
I think Jay Mueller is missing our next mastermind meeting in June. So sorry about that. All right. If anybody has any final questions, happy to take them on. I don't see any hand raises. So at this point, Jay Mueller, I want to thank you very much for your generosity and sharing, and also congratulate you on your success. and encourage you to get out on one of those bikes that I see behind you as soon as you can.
Yes, sir.
I am clocking in close to 50 miles. I mean, now that the weather is nice, getting close to 50
man.
miles a weekend. So,
Put me to shame. All right, we have to share your miles with me so you can.
oh yeah, we could do that. Oh, that would be a motivator. Oh man.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Okay. Yeah. And for everybody who's able to join us, thanks so much for joining us today. And keep an eye on your email because we'll be having these kind of conversations with a little more frequency moving forward. So all around, thank you very much. Everybody take care. Hi, Michael Jans again. And before we wrap up, let me share something that still inspires me to this day. One of our early Blueprint members, Lee Henry, showed the insurance world what is truly possible. He installed a system that allowed him to take 26 weeks off every year while growing his agency by $400,000 in commissions, not just for 1 year, but year after year after year. That's the power of working on your business, not just in it. If you're ready to transform your insurance business, and I think you are, if you're listening to this podcast, visit insura-preneur.com with a dash in the middle to get your copy of the 5-step blueprint for fast growth and peak valuation. This is the same system that's helped agencies grow from $6 million to $120 million or more in premium. Please don't let another day go by without exploring what's possible for your agency. Head to insura-preneur.com and download the blueprint. Meanwhile, keep challenging the status quo and don't just beat your own records, beat industry records. Build a business that gives you and your family the life of your dreams. This is Michael Jans, and you've been listening to the Insura-Preneur podcast. And remember, Insura-Preneur has a dash in the middle. So go dash there and get a copy of your blueprint. Talk to you soon.